Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Magicians Without Borders Conversations. Today is episode 35, and we're going to talk about, uncertainty. We're going to talk about what's the future of uncertainty, something that it has ring true very much in this past year. And, well, we're going to explore it from different perspectives. And before we dabble into the uncertain, I wanted to remind you guys that we have our mailbag episode every last Wednesday of the month. So on April, that would be on the 28th. That means next week. So if you have a subject you want us to talk about, if you want to be a guest on our show to ask us questions, please do. Tweet them at magicians at magicianswb, or send them at our email podcast@magicianswithoutborders.com, and we would love to hear from you so that we can discuss your questions and try to answer them. And as always, I want to remind you that we have our store. You can go to store.magicianswithoutborders.com, and over there you can find magic that we do ourselves and our students. So there's magic shows that you can have, virtual magic shows anywhere. We have one next week for a birthday, and we also have a corporate one next week as well. You can also have workshops. You can learn magic from us, from Magicians Without Borders, and that's a wonderful way for you to support us. And the last thing that you can get in the store is the Become a Magician Magic course, a wonderful self-paced video magic course that Tom Verner and Janet Fredericks put together, that if you go through it, you can have a 30-minute magic show of your own that you can perform. And before we start, I wanted to also remind you that we have our virtual corporate magic shows, corporate magic for virtual events. That is a great way for us to support our cause, and for you to get your team, a remote team, motivated, or if you have an online event, to enhance it with virtual magic. So here's how it looks. During that virtual corporate magic show, you can expect, different cameras. We have different things that we can do. So let me show you a little description of what I mean by that. Hello, my name is Carlos López from Magicians Without Borders, and this is where we create our virtual magic show. We would love to have you. We have multiple cameras where we can see magic different ways, even one for close-up. Let me take you there, and here you can see magic that's going to happen very close in front of your screen, and we would love to have you here with us. We've done this show over the last year for great companies like Waymo, YouTube, Google, and we would love to have you. We can deliver this show via Zoom, via Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, or WebEx, or any other communication platform. Looking forward to seeing you at the show. Bye-bye. That's a way that you can support us. So go to corporate.magicianswithoutborders.com and you can find there are different kinds of shows that we can put on for a corporate audience. We have keynote speeches, we have magic shows, we have a workshop, and a way to combine them. So without any further ado, let's welcome our founder, Tom Verner. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well, but I'm looking out the window and winter just does not want to go away. It's snowing. We have about 2 or 3 inches of snow. It's supposed to snow all night on top of the flowers that are just coming up. Oh. Anyhow, what you were talking about in your introduction about uncertainty and adapting. So I wasn't planning on there being snow outside the window. What's the future of uncertainty?
Yeah. What do you think about that topic, Tom?
Well, I think if there is a word that was the word for this past year, it certainly was a sense of uncertainty of, how long was this going to go on? How were we going to get a vaccination? Is the vaccination going to work? Are people going to take the vaccination? And what's going to happen? And people couldn't make any plans this year because we didn't really know what was going to happen. And that was very, if there's, as a psychologist, if there's a source of anxiety, uncertainty is probably up at the top of the list,
like number one.
Just not knowing what's going to happen. That's very, the fantasy is we do know what's going to happen. And actually, we never really know what's going to happen. But we certainly had a real dose of uncertainty in the sense of you'd call somebody about, I had 30 shows planned this summer. Scheduled, and bam, every single one of them gone, and well, do you want to reschedule them for the fall? Well, we don't know. And now the fall was, a fantasy that things were going to be getting back to normal. And even now, people are just beginning to have a sense of planning something.
Oh, yes, I think that the plans went, out the window, and we had to adapt on it like real fast, like, not real fast. Like I think that we, as people that work in the social sector in doing this kinds of work in uncertain environments, we are used to adapting quickly. And I think that came as a positive thing during last year, meaning that when you say, hey, I'm gonna go do a show in X part of a refugee camp, but if that refugee camp, something happens, a security thing is going on, or lights go out, or whatever, well, you need to readjust, right? Mm-hmm. Or when this happens a lot when you go to a place and they're like, like an orphanage, and you had a show scheduled, and they say the perfect place to have the show is taken. There's no place for us to have a show, right? And you're like, but we had it scheduled. Yeah, like, what are you gonna do, right? You need to adapt and say, okay, let's figure out what space we could use for this, or that you say, okay, we had 100 people joining, right? And then you get there and there's just 10, right? Then you need to figure out, well, magic for 10 people is very different from magic for 100. What can you do? What can you adapt? Or the other way around, right? You say, yeah, there were we plan for 10, and then we arrive, boom, there's 200. And you're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very uncertain.
The
But
first refugee show we did, Janet and I, the man from the UN said there'll be about 150, 200 people. We got there were 1,500 people, like 5, 8 times more than we had planned on, and you just have to adapt somehow.
yeah, you have to do that, and you have to be ready. I mean, you cannot say, okay, no, let's just reschedule and I'll come back tomorrow or whatever. No, to do that now. So yeah, I guess that sense of I can I can improvise, right? I can
That's great.
I can play with the situation and see what other avenues are there that I could use. I think that came useful for us and the work that we still do last year.
Yeah.
And I think a statement to that is those virtual shows that we were talking about. Those virtual shows that everybody naturally pivoted there because that's what we had available, right? But I think that we're just in the tip of the iceberg of what virtual shows can be, right? I think we are all exploring, all of us that are in it and that are seeing the benefits of it are discovering that there's a whole world out there that can be explored and that we are exploring right now. I think we just got started, and this is something that's not going away, that we're going to continue having virtual shows forever, as we now have shows on cruise ships, or we have shows on corporate venues, or we have shows on wherever that are permanent now. This is something that's going to be permanent from now on. Mm-hmm. That's my belief, and I know we need to adapt and create new things. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on it, on how hard it was for you, right? But again, having that mentality of we can adapt to any situation, how that was useful for this transition.
The first thing I was going to say before you kind of asked it in a more specific kind of way, I feel Magicians Without Borders was just so blessed to have you as our director of global programs with your background, in IT, and you're not afraid of computers, just the opposite. You're really aware of how they work and their possibilities, and you adapted really easily. I had a very, I'm even embarrassed to say this, but like a rigid sense of virtual magic. I don't even trust television, magic on television. For 30 years, I just never really enjoyed magic on television, as spectacular as it was. It just felt like a live art, an in-person art. And the part of magic, of being a magician and a performing magician, that I really love is being there with a group of people and trying to figure out who they are and how I can connect with them, and then connecting, hopefully, and playing, like your t-shirt. Improv is a lot of, playful, exactly. The word improv and playful to me are very much connected. That improv, you have to play because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the other person's going to do. Like contact. You've done contact improv, right? Where you move with somebody. And it's amazing when you let go, you can't tell who's leading. It's really, really magical. Or am I moving this, or am I following, or am I leading? And it's a very powerful place to be in, so I think you have, in not just during the pandemic, but in many ways, have dragged me, kicking and screaming into the 21st century as far as IT and computers. And I still have a difficult time. I've been teaching this course for a center down in Middlebury the last few weeks, and it's on Zoom. And I just miss, I just can't teach so well to those tiny little, blocks of people, those little thumbnails, but I'm learning, and they seem to be enjoying it, and I'm learning how to enjoy it, and adapting, as you said. I think that's a sign of maturity. And I don't think I'm real mature in the computer adaptation so well. But when things don't go the way we planned them, to be able to go with the flow and come up with something new and appropriate.
Yeah, I was talking with Pollo. Remember, we had him on a few episodes ago, and he was just telling me he saw, I don't know, a video on social media about Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster?
Mm-hmm.
How Blockbuster was this huge enterprise. It had upwards of 6,000 stores in the U.S., right? And now they only have one, right? And it was this animation of how when it started, it was a map of the U.S. and little white dots started to appear on where with a timeline. So 1980, whatever, the one store, and then 1985, two stores, and then 5, 10, all the way to 6,000, and then in a couple of years, 0, right? So we got into talking about it, like, hey, how did they not see that coming, right? How come they were so big and they did not make a change or something, right? And I made a comment that I remember an interview of the CEO, I don't remember the name of him, saying like, hey, that Netflix thing of mailing DVDs and then they're trying to do streaming, that's never going to work, right? They'll never catch us or whatever. Like, we're the big guys. And of course, hindsight is 2020, but they weren't able to see the future. By the way, nobody can. But when it started happening, they weren't able to adopt or adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Pollo's answer to it, or his interpretation was, "Oh, how arrogant of them, right? How arrogant of him and them of saying we're not going to change, right? This is the way that it's done, and that we've always done it, so it must continue."
Yeah.
And I know that struck me of doing a parallel to this times here. There's a lot of performers, a lot of restaurants, a lot of people that are having a bad time because of lockdowns and restrictions. And also there are a bunch of them that are resisting the change, because changing is super hard to do. Of course, changing is very hard to do. And it's painful and it's not easy, and you don't want to do it because you know how to do it one way, and then you need to relearn stuff. But we had to do it, right? We had to allow this, to embrace it, and being humble enough to say, hey, let's try it. Mm-hmm. This is the world. This is the direction the world is going. Let's try it. Let's do it. And I don't know, I just want to say that you have to be humble to accept change. You cannot be, arrogant to resist it.
Some humility that my way may not be the only way. It may not be the best way. Maybe there are other ways. That sounds so simple. And yet, if you think about Netflix, they weren't all that different from Blockbusters when they first began. All they did was sort of eliminated you having to drive to the store. All you had to do was go to your mailbox and pick your new one up and put the other one there. That wasn't all that different than Blockbusters. But then to go from there to say, maybe we can send it some other way, we can send it digitally. Oh my God, what an amazing revolution, that, I used to mail those red envelopes,
Yes.
I did that for a number of years, and now.
Yeah, but now it's amazing. But right now, mailing DVDs for Netflix is still 6% of the revenue, which
Oh,
is,
it is.
yeah, it's mind blowing.
I didn't know that.
They optimized it the most that they could. They cut everything, every cost down, and they still have 6% of the revenue, which is huge. Which
Is that globally, you mean?
Yeah, of their revenue, meaning maybe it's just United States. I don't have I'm not clear on that right now, but still, they do it because there's still rural places that don't have a broadband internet, and it's very hard to get it or very expensive. So renting a DVD is easier.
Yeah. That's good.
So anyway, so on Magic we have to adapt. And I wanted to show you another video because this is something that our students are adapting. They themselves had to adapt. When you saw the clips of the virtual corporate magic, we all have a backdrop that's the same backdrop. It's a black cloth with some red cloth on it, like a little theater curtains.
Yeah.
And we've been playing on the idea of how to reduce the uncertainty when we do live shows. Because when we do live shows, I'm fortunate enough to live in a place in the city where the internet is very stable. But the kids, they live in the slums, and over there, I mean, electric power is not certain. Internet is also uncertain. Things that might happen on the street are uncertain. So they're always very nervous, and we have had sometimes on the shows, very few times when they come on and they're like, no, you know what, I can't because whatever happened, so I need to log off, or we lost their signal. So we're trying to reduce that uncertainty by having backups, and those backups are videos that I from here can play. And that's also something that I learned, right? How to play a video on a live feed, like we're doing now. And our kids are doing wonderful routines that are there are like those TV shows back in the day, right? But now on this format. So that's a very great thing of fighting that uncertainty with technology, and this is how one of those videos looks. So this, I think this is going to be the first time that we're going to show a magic trick on our conversations.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, we're 35 shows in, and
we haven't done a magic trick. Good for us.
Yay for us. And we still are not going to do a magic trick because this is Tamara doing her magic trick. So here she is.
Hi! Welcome to the show. I am Tammy. Okay. Okay? Perfect. Memorize one card. Memorize one card. Okay? Perfect.
I think that's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool. You can,
So if her internet service went out or the electricity went out, you could um, put
pop
up
that. Yeah.
the pre-recorded one, and it wouldn't look any different than the live one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, it's not going to be that live experience, but it's going to be a very, very well substituted one. A good thing is, the quality is going to be better because from my end, the internet is better, so we could do that as well. So, and sometimes there's also scheduling challenges, right? And
Yeah.
you can, you're double booked or whatever. You can, I mean, right now with this technology and virtual shows we can do that, try and do multiple shows or closer shows together than before.
Yeah. Yeah. Would
Yeah,
you would people buy a completely pre-recorded show, do you think? Or
I think they're doing it, actually. Right now there's right now last weekend in Colombia, one of Colombia's most successful magicians, Juan Alvarez, he has a show that calls the One Show, because the one sounds in Spanish like Juan, like his name. So One Show.
oh,
That One Show, he did it a couple of months back live. Then he recorded it, and right now he just sold tickets to the recorded one, saying it's a recorded one. So it's a little bit cheaper than before,
wow.
and it works. Jorge Blas, also in Spain, he does this big, huge theater hybrid thing. Awesome. So there's people on theater, but there's people online, and there's magicians, guest magicians on stage, but guest magicians online. So it's this whole hybrid experience. And he did it live, and then he recorded it, and then resold it as a recording.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, we're consuming this in different ways now, and I think as I said before, we're exploring all the possibilities.
I was just thinking, like the program, I don't know, they probably have different names for it, merge mail, where you can send out a mailing from your mailing list and it'll say Dear Carlos, and Dear Tom, and each one is personalized, right? That you could have certain places in the show where, say it was a show for Google, you could say, I'm very honored to be here to perform for Google. And Google would be said,
Very good idea, Tom. Very
but
good
that,
idea.
but that could be, I don't know how you would edit that in. That's probably not that difficult. I don't know.
Oh, that's a pretty good idea. I love that idea.
you know
Very
and
good
there
idea.
may even be a program where throughout the show you say Google 4 times and all you have to do is say it once and it'll plug into all 4 of those places on the tape. I don't know.
That's a possibility. Very, very well thought of. I like the way you're going there, Tom. Very, very good.
So it does feel individualized, but it really is
Exactly.
it is individualized, but only, yeah. So I don't know.
Awesome. Yes. So where I wanted to explore that sense of uncertainty from different parts of our lives, and I touched a little bit on how the social work, it's also uncertain, and how we don't know what we're gonna get when we go and perform in these places. Also, that we don't know if we're gonna meet our budget and the things that we need to fundraise for, and all that is uncertain. But what other places in your life or in your story, Tom, do you think that uncertainty played a role, and how do you manage it, or how did it manifest?
Well, I'm 2 things popped into my mind. They're not exactly a response to your question, but let me just see where they go. In the beginning of the 20th century, when um, relativity and quantum mechanics were just emerging, and Werner Heisenberg proposed the uncertainty principle, right? that we could not know. I think basically at first it was we can't know the location and the velocity of a particle. We can only know one or the other. We can't know both. That one of them is going to remain unknown and uncertain. And that's the uncertainty principle. And it was really, really hard for physicists who were like, since Newton, we're going to know everything about the nature of reality. And now one of the key principles is uncertainty, that the ultimate nature of reality may be unknowable and uncertain, And I think there is something, there's a book by a philosopher, a student of Eastern religions named Alan Watts. And he has a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity. The wisdom of insecurity. And I think being certain about things can be really, really dangerous in certain ways. They say there's a 16th century philosopher named Meister Eckhart. And he says the greatest impediment to learning is knowledge. I know that, and if you know something, just like I know how to perform magic. You get into a room with real breathing bodies and you're 2 feet away from them and you interact and that's how you do magic. Well, that's getting in the way of me believing and learning about Zoom. Like what I know can get in the way of learning new things, So there can be a certain advantage to not knowing or to like opening yourself up to not knowing. And so that's what occurred to me was uncertainty can be positive in a certain way.
Yes.
In a certain way, right?
Yeah, because I'm thinking right now when you said that when we know a certain trick, right? A certain performance, like we know it, we rehearse it so we know it, right? And when we meet somebody else that does something similar but has a little thing different, you're like, no, wait, but why? Right? Like, and you challenge just the way that you do it. And sometimes it's hard to learn, right? To develop, because you said it took me a long time to do it, and now you're telling me it's like not like that, or there's another way, and sometimes you get stuck in the old ways of saying, yeah, no, it's that way. It's not supposed to change. It's not supposed to be to evolve.
Yeah, one of the best times of learning in my life, as far as magic was concerned, I was in a group and we met for 3 hours, one time for 3 hours a month, once a month. And it was headed up by the great writer and creator of magic, Bob Neal. And we met at his house and we would have a little bit of discussion, just sort of what's happening in our lives, and people talking about different shows that they've seen, different magicians, and just sort of conversation while we were eating our lunch. And then there were 2 hours left. And each week we had 2 magicians, and we would perform something. And then for an hour, the 5 other people in the group would give you feedback on that. And why did you do it this way? Did you ever think of doing it that way? Or some of the most devastating questions was, why should I even care about this trick you're doing? Get me to care about it. How can you get me to care about this trick? And it was amazing. You would go into that. And Bob Neal has one of the most, I want to get him to come on to the show. He's 91 years old. He still works every day. He just published a new book a month. I have it right here, actually. I've been reading it. It's called Magic Inside Out. And that's Bob on the cover. And he's a wonderful, wonderful man. And he would come up with the most amazing ways to turn your magic trick on its head, or what you thought was the magic moment. He could find another 2 or 3 in there. It was really, really wonderful. But you had to go there not attached to your way of doing the trick, because you knew it was going to get demolished, and they weren't all negative. They were always giving you feedback that was to try to make it even better. It's good. How can we make it better? That was the basic philosophy. So I think that's that's related to that, letting go, that and being humble, as you said.
The knowledge won't. Don't let knowledge stand in your way of of moving forward and growing. And I want to explore other areas of your life. We talked a little bit before about this, on the uncertainty of an audience, right? When you perform, you don't know how the audience is going to react. If they're all going to be judgy, or they're all going to be passive, or they're going to be very loud. And you can, when you're performing, you deal with that uncertainty. But in what other areas of your life you felt that uncertainty of standing in front of other people?
Well, I think I just mentioned that I've been teaching this course the last few weeks on Zoom to a group of people, and I was really, really preparing for the course. And it's a course I taught many times when I was teaching at a university. But I hadn't taught it in a while, so I went over the material. But I felt terribly unprepared for the first session. And I really forgot that in 40 years of teaching, I always felt unprepared that first class. And I realized the one thing I can't prepare for is who's going to be there, who my students are going to be, and what kind of students are they going to be. Are they going to talk too much? Are they not going to talk enough? Are they going to be interested in the material? Are they just taking the course because it fit into their schedule and they don't really want to take a psychology course, but it was convenient, so they took it, and they had to take 15 credits that semester or something. So I think that's true with I perform almost every Wednesday night at a resort in the Adirondack Mountains, a really, really wonderful place called Timberlock. And I've been there. The owners say I've been there 15 years. I don't know. I can't believe it. But this is a resort where the same people come back year after year. And about 60% of the people are old timers. And some of them have literally seen my show 10 or 15 times, And then there's a 40% of people who are newcomers, brand new, or have only been there 1 or 2 years or something. So I'm always unprepared in a certain way. I don't know how many of them are going to. So what it does is it forces me, first of all, to develop new material. So if I do 8 routines during the show every summer, I hope that at least 2 or 3 of them are brand new, or it's the same trick done in a different way. And
so you have to force yourself on doing new things, or the old thing in a new way, or with a new twist, or like I do a book test, one that I got from Max Maven,
a really amazing book test. But I've done that, and I have two shows, and I try to alternate them, and I hope I hit, people who haven't seen that material maybe in a couple of years or whatever. So I like doing a book test. So I'm working on a brand new book test, one that's a totally different principle. It's a different book. It's Alice in Wonderland, a book that I really like. And I was thinking about something do you have anything right now that you wanted to say?
Well, no, I just wanted to wrap that around and saying, it's I think it's important with hearing our conversation and thinking on it, to be open, to not let knowledge stand in the way of growing, and to be okay with uncertainty. Like we need to be okay with uncertainty. We need to be able to deal with the uncertainty of life, of things that you might have for certain, right? That you presume they're going to be like that forever, and suddenly they're not. So just to be open to changing. I do have another topics I wanted to talk about, but I'm very curious to hear your or what popped into your head.
Well, what I'm thinking is, I think that I just mentioned that this was this course on dreams that I'm teaching. It's one that I've taught many times. And there's the old story of the college professor who has the yellowed lecture notes. They're the notes that he made 15 years ago, and he's still using those same notes. And I think what's wrong with that is that I think a really good teacher is a good student, and that you're interested in your topic, so you're reading new books, you're reading new articles. And so when you teach the course next time, you're not going to use all the same material. You're going to use new material. So something like a pandemic, as far as magic is concerned, I think it forces us to think in new ways and to come up with new material, because some of the material didn't work. I think I'm seeing more and more how clever magicians are at using Zoom and how to interact with people, and make them as interactive as possible, and making things interactive that I didn't think were interact. Go ahead. What?
Yeah, and using different tools to enhance it. There's technological tools. There's tools that are outside of the frame. There's tools that are computer tools. There are tools that are they were, as everything with magic, they were not designed for that, but magicians find creative ways to use them to enhance that impossibility moment and that awe creation moment.
Yeah. I mean, there was an old expression that the difference between an amateur magician and a professional magician is that the professional does, or the amateur does, new tricks for the same people. And oops, I gotta turn this.
And the professional does the same tricks for different people, right?
For different audiences, But what's really wonderful is, and I know professionals are often so busy doing 250 shows a year that they are very slowly, over 5-7 years or so, developing a new show. And then they put their old show away and they start a new show. But I think I think learning new things and being a good student is how we grow, both as a person and as a performer. I think.
I think it's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think.
You,
So
when you
you
said,
had something else you wanted to say, I think.
well, yeah, I wanted to try and mix your the different hats that you wear with this question or this thing I wanted to pursue, and it's that I like when things are very uncertain for me, I tend to daydream a lot, right? I tend to drift away, to procrastinate, and create scenarios in my mind where I don't know, scenarios that are different from what I'm feeling or seeing or overwhelmed with, right? But then that got me to thinking of a. I love to dream, right? I love to have dreams. Like whenever I wake up and I had a great dream, I always tell my wife like, look, I dreamt this and it was so cool and it was great. I used to journal them and I stopped. I probably should start doing that again. But where I want to go to is that dreams for me are most of the time awesome, right? They're great. I sometimes when I've been dreaming for a couple of days, I look forward to dreaming when my life is uncertain, when the situations around my life are not, certain. I'm overwhelmed. I look forward to dreaming because when I am dreaming, um, even though it's uncertain because I don't know what I am going to dream about, it ends up being cool, right? It ends up being great. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. The relation of the uncertainty and dreams, and even though they're not real, right? For me, sometimes they're awesome, they're great. I look forward to it, but I don't know how I create them, right? So I don't know that how I create them, but when I do create them, they are cool. But that uncertainty of I don't know how they're gonna work out, but in the end, it was so vivid, so cool that it ends up being something that I haven't completely, or I think I have no control over it, but it ends up being cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know your thoughts on that crazy,
It's
mixture
such
of.
it's such an immense topic. I think what's really wonderful, one of the wonderful things about dreams is that I can't predict what I'm going to dream tonight. I can't, and there's something wonderful about that, I do something called dream incubation, which is like um, incubating a dream. Like I'll go to sleep, and as I'm going to sleep, I have a question, some issue in my life that's maybe causing me difficulty, or I need to know some information about it, some guidance about it, some insight about it. And I'll ask my dreams, I'll ask that place inside of me from which the dreams come, send me a dream that'll help me understand this situation I'm in more and more. And I have to have what I call psychological faith that the dream I'm going to have is a response to my question. And I look at that dream as if this is a response to that question, what is it saying? How should I think differently about this situation I'm in? And it can be it's a very ancient practice. The Chinese did it, the Indians did it. In ancient Greece, there were over 400 temples, small temples in ancient Greece to the god of healing, Asclepius, and people would go to those temples and sleep there and ask for a dream about a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual problem. And Asclepius, the god of healing, they believed would send them a dream. And the attendants at the temple, the ones who took care of the temple, were called therapeutos. And that's where we get the word therapist. They
Wow.
were the temple attendants, And then in the morning, they would talk to the people about their dream and how did it relate to their question or their problem or whatever. And I think dreams are. Can I just tell you a dream that
Go ahead.
when we owned this, um, when I had a magic shop, there at some point, and maybe we can talk about this in more detail sometime. I got interested in whether the kids who came to the magic shop ever had dreams about doing magic. I just got curious. I was writing my doctoral dissertation, and it had to do with some of it had to do with dreams. And so there was a little guy named Joshua Smith, and we loved him because he came every Saturday. He had $20. He was a pretty wealthy, came from a wealthy family, and his family would drop him off at the magic shop as soon as we opened at 10 o'clock. And he would stay all day, and his mother or father would come back and pick him up at 4 o'clock. And he always spent $20. So it was great having Joshua there. So I sat down. We had a little table in the shop, some chairs, and I sat down with Joshua and I said, "Did you ever have a dream about doing magic?" And he said, "It's interesting. I had a dream a few nights ago about magic." I said, "Well, what was it?" He said, "I came to the magic shop and you showed me a whole bunch of things, and I bought a whole bunch of, and I loved the tricks. You showed them to me, and they were fantastic. And I bought them, and you put them in a bag, and I took them home. And when I got home, I opened the bag, and it was empty." And I went, "Oh, no." And I came back to the magic shop, and the magic shop was gone. Like the two buildings that were on either side of the magic shop were now right next to each other, and the shop was gone. That was it. That was the dream. So I said to him, and this is so important for young magicians and old magicians alike. I said, "Well, when you buy something and you get home and you open up the bag and you take it out and you find out how it's done, are you disappointed?" He said, "Always, almost always. It's just a stupid rubber band, or it's this trick card and then you have to work with it." He said,
When you start, you find them, you're like, "No, I can't believe I was fooled by this.
"I can't believe it. This is stupid. Nobody will believe this. This is so dumb." And I said, "Why?" He said, "But when I saw it, I really loved it." And I said, "What did you love?" He said, "Well, I just loved how I felt when I saw that trick. I was just so fooled, and it was wonderful and amazing." I said, "You can't buy that. The bag is always going to be empty if you're trying to buy the magic. What's in the bag is just a little stick or a rubber band or something that has 6 colors on one side and all the same color on the other side of the stick. And it's not, the magic isn't in the bag. The bag is always empty." So we talked about that and how you really have to, your job is to create the magic. My job is to sell you a prop, that you can create the magic with. So that was Saturday. Monday, this other guy, Billy, he was a high school kid. He was a little older. And he came into the shop and he had this book, this very book. That was 50 years ago. I've had this book for 50 years. And these are the short stories of H.G. Wells. And he said and our store was called The Magic Shop. And he said, "There's a story in here called The Magic Shop. and I thought you would like it, because it's called the Magic Shop. I said, well, that's cool. What's the story about? He said, it's about this kid who comes to a magic shop, and there's this old kind of wizard there, and he's showing him magic. And the guy buys some magic, and he goes home, and he opens the bag, and there's nothing in the bag. And he comes back, and the magic shop has disappeared. He said, do you want this book? I said, I would. It was exactly the dream that Joshua had. And the next Saturday, I said to Josh, Josh was only 10 years old. He had never read H.G. Wells. He had never even heard of H.G. Wells. So what is that? I mean, this is one of my most precious objects that I own. And because I'm teaching this course on dreams, I wanted to pull this off the shelf upstairs today. And so I had it here, and you just brought up dreams. It's really
cool.
Interesting.
That's a wonderful story. I think that, it's so cool how this subject of uncertainty got us to this story in the end, which I just appreciated a lot, Tom.
Well, there's something I can't quite connect it, but there's something about Joshua, the bag being empty and uncertainty. There's some connection there. I mean, can you make any connection?
Well, what I was thinking about is that when you buy that magic trick, right, you are uncertain of what you're going to find. You don't know what you're going to find, but you hope that it's something like he wanted. He wanted to find the magic, right?
Yeah.
But I think that we don't make that connection of, I am buying the secret, right? I'm buying the prop so that I will be able to generate what that prop or trick generated on me when I first saw it, right?
Exactly.
I think that connection, it's not obvious. It's not obvious when you buy your first magic prop. It's not obvious when you start learning magic. You need to be able to make that connection. And I think it's Juan Tamariz who wrote that when you're a magician, you sacrifice having that illusion, having that moment of awe, because you're going to create that for the audience, and you need to know how stuff works, right? Maybe that's a very bad translation of the quote, but it's that sentiment, right? Of you need to sacrifice that, because now you're going to be the one that generates that in others. But that connection of you having to sacrifice something in order to generate it, it's something that we don't do at the beginning, and we're lost. So that uncertainty of what you're going to find, and then finding something that's super simple. I mean, for me, that feeling was not of, oh, it's so stupid, but it's so simple. Like, I cannot believe this simple stuff created that in me. It's like, it's so simple. It's just, a piece of tape. It's just a rubber. It's just a thread. It's just something so simple, but the outcome of it, it's so grand, right? That it's kind of a disconnect there, right? It's I don't know, like I don't know. You don't believe your reaction when you know how it's done.
I think we've said this on the show before, but I know that I'm constantly amazed that I can take a Ziploc bag, like a quart-size Ziploc bag, and put 4 sponge balls in there, a deck of cards, 4 quarters, maybe a mouth coil and a piece of paper, and a thumb tip, and seal that up. And it's a little bag. And I can do like a half-hour magic show anywhere
it's easy,
in the world with that little bag of silly little things, a little rubber thumb, a piece of silk, a few rubber bands, some coins, a card. It's really amazing. It really is very simple. A lot of the time. I mean, if you're doing a big Vegas stage show and you have,
It's different.
$250,000 worth of, illusions and props. I never ever wanted to do that. Actually, I never wanted to be a stage illusionist. I really love taking those simple things and finding magic and creating magic with them.
Awesome, Tom. Well, our time is up, but thank you for sharing all those stories and for navigating this uncertain episode with me today about uncertainty. And any last words before we part, Tom?
Well, something I'm really looking forward to, maybe the week after the mailbag episode, which is next week, or no, the week next week, is someone who used to come to that magic shop 50 years ago as a young kid, and he would come regularly. He's thinking I wrote him, and he'd like to come and be a guest on the show. And so I'm very interested in what his experience was at that magic shop 50 years ago.
That would be so great to explore with him. So I'm looking forward to it. And I would love to know from whoever's listening, what's been uncertain in your life, and how you navigated that. I'd love to hear that. So let us know in the comments. And well, this has been this uncertain episode this week. Thank you, Tom, so much for being here with me.
Yeah, I would love it, what you just said. Anybody out there who has ideas about this topic of uncertainty and what this past year has been and what you've learned from it, and what's the positive aspects of uncertainty, Okay.
Love to hear from you.
So wonderful. So see you soon again. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.